Ladies and gentlemen, I am very glad to see you on my channel. Today, I will present to your attention an extraordinary story about adultery and the karma that comes with it.
Initially, I was apprehensive when interacting with a certain customer, but his intriguing qualities piqued my interest. We quickly became friends thanks to his amiable demeanor and uproarious sense of humor. While I have a loving and devoted husband, I found myself unable to resist my customer's charming allure. Despite my inner misgivings, I convinced myself that our relationship was merely casual and that I wouldn't let it become something more serious. I was oblivious to the fact that my decision would ultimately shatter my marriage and upend my life in ways I could never have foreseen. Our first encounter was when I was bartending at a cozy local spot where regulars came to unwind after a long day. Our paths crossed a few times, but I didn't give it much thought at the time. However, one night he entered the bar and took a seat. We engaged in conversation, and I quickly noticed his charming personality, sharp wit, and warm smile. His magnetic and charismatic demeanor drew me in, and I found myself laughing uncontrollably at his jokes. Although I held an initial interest in him, I was cautious about pursuing a romantic relationship. Ultimately, he remained just another customer, and I was unwilling to let my personal and professional lives intermingle. As our conversation progressed, it became evident that there was an unexplainable bond between us. I couldn't ignore the undeniable chemistry and profound connection we shared. Before long, we were spending time together outside of the pub, going on dates, and simply enjoying each other's company. I was enamored by his wit, empathy, and kindness, and I was constantly intrigued by the intricacy of his character. From the beginning, we engaged in meaningful discussions, sharing our aspirations, apprehensions, and desires with one another. Soon enough, I acknowledged that I was deeply in love with him. Despite any hesitations, I was certain that he was the one for me. We continued to venture out, discovering new locations and establishing a sturdy base for our relationship. Although it was a challenge, I eventually mustered up the courage to discuss him with my mother. She had always been overprotective and held high expectations for my partners. I was apprehensive about her accepting him, and I feared that they might not see eye to eye. Conversely, my elation about this budding relationship was so immense that I longed to share it with my loved ones. I distinctly remember the day when I decided to bring him to my home and introduce him to my mother. I devoted considerable time to preparing myself, hoping to make a good impression on both of them. Upon their meeting, I felt relieved to see that they hit it off right away. My husband's humor and wit won my mother over, and he appeared to genuinely enjoy conversing with her. They bonded over their shared love for classic films and music, which brought them closer together. As time passed, my husband and mother developed a close relationship. He would often visit her, either to lend a hand with household errands or simply to engage in conversation with her. The comforting thought that the two most important people in my life had a positive relationship filled me with a sense of peace. When my husband proposed to me, it was a moment of unparalleled joy. I was certain that I wanted to spend my life with him, and I accepted his proposal with eagerness. Opting for an intimate celebration, we chose to have a small wedding with only our nearest and dearest. It was a stunning occasion, brimming with love and happiness. Even as newlyweds, I remained resolute in continuing my work at the bar where we first crossed paths. The social environment and my role as a bartender brought me immense joy. The bar held a special place in my heart, as it was where my husband and I formed our initial connection. Furthermore, I believed it was crucial to maintain my independence and individuality apart from our relationship. Although my husband didn't object to my decision to keep working at the bar, I sensed that he wasn't entirely at ease with it. He would occasionally make remarks about how he wished I had a more dignified profession, but I dismissed it as his protective nature. Over time, I began to recognize that his discomfort with my job was a more significant issue than I had initially thought. Being a bartender was more than just a means of income for me, it was a passion. I adored the rapid environment, the feeling of belonging, and the bond I shared with the regular patrons who visited frequently. It provided me with a sense of purpose and individuality that I had never felt before. Regrettably, my unfaithfulness would soon shatter everything I held dear. I acted recklessly and failed to consider the repercussions of my actions. My selfish desires clouded my judgment, and I neglected to consider how my actions would impact those around me, particularly my husband and colleagues at the bar. I recall that evening with clarity. It was a bustling night at the bar, and I was working a late shift. A regular patron repeatedly offered to buy me drinks, and I was flattered by the attention. One drink led to another, and soon we were kissing in a secluded area of the bar. In my inebriated state, I failed to consider the consequences of my actions. I acted recklessly and disregarded the potential ramifications that could have impacted both my career and my relationship. I believed that my actions would remain undiscovered and that it was simply a momentary lapse in my decision-making. However, I was mistaken. One of my colleagues at the bar overheard our conversation about the game we were engaged in and exploited my carelessness. They approached my husband and revealed that they had evidence of my infidelity, but would only disclose it if he paid a substantial sum of money. This news caught my husband off guard, and in his quest for the truth, he paid the requested amount and received the evidence. His curiosity consumed him, and he confronted me with rage, accusing me of being unfaithful. When he showed me the videotape, I could no longer deny my infidelity. Initially, I attempted to reject the evidence, but it was undeniable. I was overwhelmed with shame and regret, knowing that I had betrayed the trust of the man I loved and jeopardized my professional reputation. The moment my husband confronted me about my affair was undoubtedly the lowest point of my life. I could sense the anguish and disappointment in his gaze, and it was apparent that my actions had caused him immense emotional turmoil. I expressed my remorse and made efforts to rectify the situation, but it was too late. The damage had been done, and our relationship had been irreparably fractured. It was apparent that our bond would never be as it was before. He was taken aback by my betrayal, and I was aware that my selfishness had destroyed any chance of a happy future together. After revealing my extramarital affair, our relationship was forever changed. Despite my spouse's attempts to forgive me, the trust that we had built had been shattered, and the wounds were too deep to heal completely. Our relationship was strained, and it seemed as though our divide was only increasing. Meanwhile, I noticed my mother's interest in my partner was growing, and I found it amusing. Initially, I didn't pay it much attention. As time passed, I observed that they were spending more and more time together. My spouse began visiting my mother frequently, and they eventually became comfortable enough to go out for dinners and drinks. When I confronted my husband about his behavior, he initially denied it. However, he soon admitted to seeing my mother behind my back for a while. He revealed that he was seeking revenge for my infidelity and was no longer invested in our marriage. I was shocked and devastated by this revelation. It was already a betrayal that my own mother would behave in such a manner, but it was an even greater betrayal that my husband would sink to her level. It felt as though my entire life was crumbling, and I was unsure of how to proceed. A few days later, my ex-spouse handed me divorce papers and demanded that I leave. He expressed that he was tired of the drama and could not bear the thought of being married to someone who had been unfaithful to him. He emphasized that he could not bear the idea of being with someone who had betrayed him. I never could have fathomed anything more shocking than discovering that my partner was having an affair with my own mother. It was beyond belief when I first learned of it. However, the unimaginable occurred a few weeks later. I went to my mother's house to confront her about her actions. I needed to know why she had done something so hurtful. I needed answers and an understanding of how she could betray me in such a way. Upon entering her home, I noticed my husband's car parked in the driveway. Initially, it struck me as odd, but I concluded that he must have visited my mother, as he had done frequently in the preceding weeks. As I approached the room, I was struck by the peculiar sounds emanating from within. The noises grew louder as I drew closer. Upon opening the door, I was confronted with an utterly shocking sight. My husband and mother were naked and on the bed. I struggled to comprehend what I was witnessing. The scene was reminiscent of a nightmare, sending shivers down my spine. I was momentarily speechless until a blood-curdling scream escaped my lips. However, my mother and husband remained oblivious to my entrance. The situation was repulsive and left me feeling utterly crushed. I had lost everything that mattered to me: my spouse, my loved ones, and our shared job that spanned several years. It seemed as though I had hit rock bottom, with no clue how to pick myself up. The news of my divorce spread like wildfire among my colleagues at the bar, leaving them equally stunned and disheartened. As an employee, I had always prided myself on my loyalty and reliability, but now I had shattered their trust and let them down. Whenever I showed up to work, I could sense their contempt and disillusionment, realizing that I had breached their faith. It was apparent that I had fallen short of their standards, and my unfaithfulness had ultimately led to the loss of everything dear to me. The job, community, and relationships that I held dear all came crashing down, and the painful lesson learned will stay with me forever. I had grown too comfortable with the things that brought purpose to my life, and now I was left to face the repercussions of my past decisions. In hindsight, having an extramarital affair was a catastrophic mistake that I deeply regret. On the flip side, I acknowledge that my husband's actions were truly regrettable, and I am saddened by how things turned out between us. I firmly believe that two wrongs do not make a right, and I am committed to taking ownership of my own mistakes and learning from them.
When I first heard this story, I was very shocked. It was simply unbelievable. What do you think? Leave your opinion in the comments, and do not forget to subscribe to the channel. See you soon, friends. Bye-bye.